Boom. So apparently, one of the strongest points. Good afternoon, by the way. Good morning. One of the most important points about this channel apparently is that I'm a black male, and the reason why that's important is not because I think it's important, but because that's something that we get judged on from immediately, right? Like from a base level. Like there's nothing that I can do to escape that aspect of the experience. You know what I'm saying? We can't really control these micro ways, right? Because we can agree that it's a micro way to judge one another or to judge, but these things get projected onto macro levels, so much so that, like I said, it's like that these are part of the things that play into the first impression, because there are already patterns that are attributed to, having certain qualities. This is irrefutable. And what's really unfortunate about the situation is that, particularly in the black representation, right, or in the representation of whatever it means to be black, there are many negative things, or at least it's predominantly negative. I mean, look, as much as people, claim that they don't see color and like they don't discriminate, they're not like whatever, we definitely do discriminate. We definitely do judge. We can't escape that. This is a primary point of my book Judgment Day, and just generally the work that I do. You know what I mean? We are judges by nature. You know what I'm saying? And this is an inescapable part of the experience. We are given these bodies which are perpetually stimulated, and because these bodies are perpetually stimulated, we are constantly in a state of interpretation. So it's understandable that being in this predicament, that we need to develop, harness, strengthen our ability to judge. And so man, what's interesting is that there of course are those who would hear what I say at first about the thing about being black, and so many of the patterns and judgments that have been stereotypes that have been developed around being black and stuff like that, which include being a savage, being uneducated, being poor, being illiterate, being violent, being dysfunctional. People feel so justified in their judgments and stuff like that, and they would say, well, this is what we do, right? Or like if you want to change it, then you need to change it, right? You have control over that, and of course that's part of what I preach. But so it can't be ignored though that throughout history there has been interferences in this. There has been very much an intentional shaping of different types of people based on those who have had power at the time and whatnot. And then on top of that, there has been, of course, you have the people themselves. But I want to give you a great example, right? I want to give you the great example of the Civil War, right? So the Civil War happened in the 1860s. In the 1800s. Before this, we still had the transatlantic slave trade and all of that stuff. And the transatlantic slave trade was at least in the 1500s. And so we're talking about at least from the 1400s all the way to the 1800s, almost the 1900s, of the subjugation of black people, regardless of the situation, regardless of whether African kings or African rulers or people sold themselves to other people and all of this stuff. Regardless of all of that, right? There has been an intentional shaping and molding, at least especially on this side, of the border, because this is where we are, right? In America, the United States, there's been a lot of intentional building, or orchestrating, plotting, creating of what that black image is. So you're talking about hundreds of years of that. And after the Civil War, which was an argument about whether or not there should be, whether or not states should have the right to have slaves based on their constitutional right, we we when it came to the end of the Civil War, which the Union won, the Freedmen's Bureau was created, right? And with this Freedmen's Bureau, and of course we had the Emancipation Proclamation from Abraham Lincoln, but we had the Freedmen's Bureau, which was established by white people, by the Union, by the federal government. This was a federal program to help newly freed slaves, to become integrated, by the way, not integrated as in, black and white people, like removing segregation, integrated as in integrate into the society. Like, oh yes, this is America, you are an American, you know what I'm saying, and getting you accustomed with your rights, because it takes a lot to, the United States is such a wonderful country, and it was built with beautiful, beautiful intentions. And, it doesn't, like, no matter what you say about the forefathers of this country, they had great intentions. They really meant for this place to be a place where anybody could succeed. George Washington, he let all his slaves go in his will and stuff like that. He said he regretted not freeing them sooner, even in his will. He wished that he could have done that. Generally, so much. Actually, if you really look at it, like even movies like 12 Years a Slave, if you really look at it, it's really the women, and a lot of these cases who would really want to maintain this position of slavery, and they had like these men on like these like leashes on, keeping the slaves up. But that's a whole different point. People talk down on on the forefathers of this country and things of that nature. But most of those guys, and especially George Washington, who was perhaps the most revered of all of them, they were against slavery. They didn't really support slavery. It was just a way of living, and they understood the cruelty. They understood the effect that they were doing. See, because when you're a tyrant, you're not unaccountable for yourself. Like you're not. It's not like you don't know what you're doing when you're hitting somebody, what I'm saying, and yelling at somebody and cussing at somebody, and they're a person and they understand you and they're doing your bidding and all of this, right? Like, what you're doing. It's difficult to be a master the same way it's difficult to be a slave, but the positions are different. You know what I'm saying? Especially considering too, right? Like, a slave can be so many things along the spectrum. A master can be so many things along the spectrum, but we do know, though, that between the Lord and the bondsman, that these are like two distinct, like these are, in terms of discernment on the spectrum, it's different attitudes that go along with this. It's different qualities that go along with these things that reveal what these things are, that say, okay, well, that's like a master, that's like a servant, that's like a, and so they knew, at least philosophically, that it would take effort to, reintegrate slaves, or not even reintegrate, but to help them to get acclimated into their position. Like, yes, come on, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you're no longer at the mercy of us. You know what I'm saying? Like, harness your mental capacities, harness your just autonomy, harness your autonomy. And the Freedmen's Bureau struggled. The Freedmen's Bureau struggled very much. Of course they did. You know what I'm saying? I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of Plato's allegory of the cave, but with this allegory of the cave, it's like the same thing with here, where you have these people who have literally been in darkness, all their lives, and we're not just talking about children, we're talking about adults, right? And we talk about adults who take time to mature and develop and stuff, and they get acclimated in their ways, they get accustomed to their ways, and then it can be really hard to make such drastic changes to their lives, such as even that, right, being predominantly at another man's will, being the object of another man's will, versus harnessing his own, and the unfortunate thing about the Freedmen's Bureau is that it was given up on very quickly. That's why I mentioned the thing about it being hundreds of years of the subjugation and all of this type of stuff, because then you have the Freedmen's Bureau, which lasted not even a decade. It didn't even last a decade, and they gave up because they were like, oh well, it's too difficult, many don't show up to class, or they're not paying attention, they're not doing well, and all of this stuff, and they just gave up on them, right? And it's really interesting, right, where we've gone ahead and we've given up on black people, on reintegrating black people, even with their own problem that they created, you know what I'm saying, with the slavery, with all of the excess cruelty and the wickedness and everything. But we have like today where we show forgiveness and mercy and leniency and stuff like that for drug dealers, to the point where we create literal injection sites. Okay, we create injection sites, or we get rid of the death penalty for extreme offenders and things of this nature. We release pedophiles back into society, thousands at a time. You know what I'm saying? We want all of this stuff. We want to forgive criminals and and keep on fighting for their freedom and stuff like that, right? Even though we know and acknowledge that these people know what they're doing is wrong, and that they're looking for these sorts of opportunities to be free, to be to be exonerated, from what they did. But for black people, it's like black people can never be exonerated for anything. I mean, look at videos and stuff like that you see of like black people fighting, or black people yelling, or black people in confrontations. It's always immediately nigger or typical. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's a reigning thing. But when you see people of other races or other kinds and all of this type of stuff, then there's more leniency, there's more forgiveness, there's more, it's a lighter situation. It's not as harsh of a judgment. It's not about typicality. You know what I'm saying? Give them another chance and all of this. And man, the interesting thing is, regardless of what you can say, right, black people are revered. It's just done in a different sort of way. Because they can't get away from the fact that we have so much, whatever it is, talent, energy, spirit, power, whatever it is that we have, they can't deny that. That's why they stuck around the jazz bars. You know what I'm saying? That's why they stick around our women. That's why they listen to our music, and that's why they idolize our dress, our culture in general. They try to talk how we talk. You know what I'm saying? That's how it is. You feel me? And you know what I'm saying? And dog and all of that. We're very much idolized in those ways, but we're still held down. We're still held down. So it's like, whoa, hold up. Political involvement, hold on. Monetary success, hold on. It's a certain amount of capitulation that you have to do. It's a certain amount of self-hatred in a lot of cases for a lot of people to enjoy even, moderate success. As a black person, and I speak about this lack of representation because there's like in these judgments that are made, right, and these characters or these images that have been made of black people, man, you have like black people who like I said, you have the criminals, savages, rappers. People want to be the rappers, and you want to wear the jewelry and whatever, designer and all of this, and how we deal with women, whatever. How some black men deal with women, talking aggressively, whatever. And then you have on the other side, right, again, like spiritual types where like they may wear an ankh or whatever, and Egypt, and we was kings, and all of that, Pharaoh, whatever, you know what I'm saying, beads, all of this, Africa, these type of people. But there really isn't that much of a representation of like the American black man, like I'm an American black man, and I think I think to a great extent, right, there's like two different kinds of Americans. There's First Amendment Americans, and then there's Second Amendment Americans, right? I feel like First Amendment Americans, first of all, most First Amendment Americans are like, it's just like they're just spoiled, so they're just kind of just like, I can say whatever I want, blah blah blah, I can do it, freedom, I'm free to do whatever I want. But then there's Second Amendment Americans that are, it's like, I'm willing to I have rights to defend, you know what I'm saying, like there's integrity to defend, and the Second Amendment is more important than the First Amendment in my eyes because of the intent of the Second Amendment, right? Like the intent of wanting freedom of speech can be, taken in so many different ways, and one of them for sure is to be able to say whatever you want to people, right? Literally whatever you want. I can be an asshole, I can do whatever I want, freedom of the press, I can say whatever I want about people, I can formulate stories, I can gossip, I can make rumors and all that type of stuff, and I'm completely free to do that, right? And be an asshole. But with the Second Amendment, it's like, oh, okay, well, this is about tyranny. This is about, I will not allow myself to have my rights taken away, to have my right to live, to have my right to have autonomy, and my right to pursue happiness be obstructed by any sort of higher power, you know what I'm saying? Especially within reason, right? Because my intent, or our intent, is not to hurt people, right? We're not trying to hurt people or impede upon people's peace and kill people, right? But definitely understanding, you're willing to go to whatever extent that is necessary to, defend your peace, to defend your life. And the American black man understands this. The American man understands this. But the American black man understands this, and there are just like certain ways that this representation comes about. There are certain ways that this projection, comes about. There are black men who love to read. There are black men who play chess. There are black men who, black men in general, we love very hard. Like we are very empathic. We are very sensitive. You know what I'm saying, to the world. We feel the world around us. You know what I'm saying? Like, this cannot be ignored. The ways we express it may be a bit different, you know what I mean, from person to person. But at the end of the day, being a black man, and being a black man in particular, and having to deal with our condition, you know what I'm saying, and being here and feeling all of that, which does contribute to why we even have the ability in the first place. It's something that isn't really platformed very much. It's not platformed as much as it intentionally is platformed for us to be presented as, negligent savages. You know what I mean? And we all have to bear the brunt of that when we have that characterization. And the thing is, we are definitely at a point, in our society now, what with all of this access to technology and what long distance communication and instant content creation, all of this, and generally, right, like all of the different performers and actors and, idola theatri regarding, projecting images of, different types of people, particularly black people that I'm saying in this moment, where we're very aware, we're very conscious of our perception in this time. You know what I'm saying? We are very, very conscious of how we are perceived by other people. And so people who continue to play into the idea that we are uneducated, like as a whole, generally, broadly, you know what I'm saying? Like to be able to characterize us grandly as, being these, savages, negligent savages. They know what they're doing. Like they know what they're doing with our image, or they know what they are doing with the perception, because to a strong extent, right, we shouldn't care, right? We shouldn't care about what other people think about us. Let them judge. But again, like I said, the technology, right? The technology is now getting to a point where, as they've already been dreaming of since at least the 50s, where it's replicating us. And if we continue to allow the general idea as it is to be of black people that we are negligent savages, then that is how the AI will portray us, or that is how the technology will portray. That is, they will allow the technology to do that, and they're going to say, oh well, look, it's what they said. This is the data that they collected. This is how it is. You know what I'm saying? So you're gonna keep speaking out about, oh yeah, haha, it's so funny that I'm, illiterate, and I have no accountability for myself, and I'm just careless and everything. You're gonna keep saying this. You're gonna keep projecting this idea, and you think you're kidding, or you think it's funny and all this, and people are laughing at you, and you want to, oh yeah, haha, single dad, your dad's never gonna show up, all of this type of shit, and then the AI goes and replicates us, and then boom, and there's no such thing as an educated black person, or it's very few and far between, or it's just it's twisted, it's twisted and manipulated in a certain way. But predominantly, when you go to create the archetype, it's gonna be like this negligent savage, and yeah, man, like people like me can't have that. So that's a huge part of my mission. And like I said, man, it's unfortunate that really at a base level, this has to do with our societal build more so than it has to do with, meaning the socio-cultural landscape that has been dominated by the hegemony that is, the system of white supremacy, or just general, whatever, the Spaniard influence, Catholic influence, Jewish influence, all of these different things. The amalgamation of all of these things, in no time than now are we more responsible over the perception that people or objects, technology, have over us, and we should really harness that and take control of that. And that's your boy, man. Like that's what I'm doing. So yeah, I wonder how you guys feel about this. I'd love like some feedback on this. Like I said, I do want it to be known that, really quickly, I never cared about race. Like, I'm not a race person. I've never cared about that. I'm from Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is considered a battleground state. It always has been considered a battleground state. And what that means is that we don't, there's no isolated ideology in Pennsylvania in terms of our perception of the world or our perceptions of people. You know what I mean? And in fact, I would say what that means to me, what I think that means is just generally that we are open-minded. We are very open-minded. We're willing to listen. We're willing to understand and make decisions based off of the information that we are given for a situation. And, I'm from a top 10 major city in the country. And what that means is that I've been exposed to a plethora of cultures. I've been exposed to a plethora of personalities, characters. I also grew up military, so I traveled around a lot, and that also exposed me to a lot of different cultures. And I know when I see that, people suck everywhere. People are great everywhere. It's about the person. It's not about some sort of characterization. And on top of that too, right? We grow up, what I'm saying, things like, yeah, blah, 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 don't judge a book by its cover, all of these sorts of things. So that was never a thing for me. It wasn't until I was an adult, about 20 years old or so, that I really started to see, oh, okay, yeah, I was really stuck in trying to figure out the meaning of, why, what does it matter that anybody's black or white? You know what I'm saying? Why does anybody care that, you're black or white? What is the difference? Why do people care about that? I never understood. But especially when dealing with authority figures, as an adult, it really became police. It really became. It started to become apparent. But regardless, I never lost the spirit. I never lost the thing. I don't care. I don't like talking like this. I don't even like talking like this. I don't care about your skin color. I don't care where you're from. I don't care who you are, bro. I don't care who you are. or anything like that until I meet you, until we speak, until we interact, and we are in such a context where it matters. You know what I'm saying? But beyond that, I don't need to be taking the time trying to, like, characterize and stereotype people and generalize them, and then, in my active interactions, base them off of those interactions. Nah, I judge you based off of what you give me. And that's what it's supposed to be about, right? That's what this is supposed to be about. That is what it means to harness your autonomy. That is what it means to harness your conscientiousness and your responsibility. So yeah, like I said, I don't even like talking like this. So don't forget that. Don't miss that. I'm still definitely the type of person who could care less about this. I wish we didn't talk like this with the color thing, but it does matter. It does matter, and I understand as well that it will matter to people. But we just need to be more responsible over it, and particularly with the amount of access that we have to each other. You know what I mean? The strength of our access to each other. Yeah, we have to take more control. But anyway, that's enough from your boy. I love y'all. I hope y'all are great. I hope y'all are having a great Friday. It is Friday. I hope y'all have a great weekend. And I'll catch y'all in the next one. Those are theirs, let them hear.